Judge Hannah C. Dugan, who aided, allegedly, a criminal alien escaping from the courtroom as ICE was trying to arrest the individual, has been indicted by a grand jury. So all of these liberals and Democrats who are apoplectic, claiming that this was unjust, that Trump was going after judges, that she was doing the right thing. Well, the grand jury disagreed, and they've returned an indictment. So we may actually see some strong movements here. We have some other really big news. Donald Trump's administration has filed an appeal pertaining to his deportation under alien enemies. He's not arguing, however, the administration isn't just arguing that they should have a right to deport. They're arguing that these universal injunctions are unconstitutional, finally. So that's going to be big. And then, ladies and gentlemen, you know, I don't know how much people actually care about Joe Biden, but according to that book from, what was it, Jake Tapper, and I think Alex Thompson, I think the guys were, they're saying that it was actually discussed by the doctor, by Biden's doctor, that his spine was degenerated to the point where he would need to use a wheelchair. Indeed. And they knew this, and they lied. And Jake Tapper, of all people, is acting like he's shocked by this information. Meanwhile, literally anybody with eyes to see was like, yeah, Joe Biden was ill. So now he's trying to pander and sell his book. We'll talk about that. There's a lot of news today. We'll talk a bit about it. Bud Light wants to start manufacturing in the United States. We'll see if that can save them. I'm not convinced it will. Before we get started, my friends, we got a great sponsor. It is Home Title Lock. My friends, go to HomeTitleLock.com now and use promo code TIM. If you're a homeowner, you need to hear this. When's the last time you checked on your home title? That's a legal proof that you own your house. If you're like me, the answer is never. Well, to be fair, because of these guys, I did. And I will tell you, too, I was actually really surprised when I bought my first house, how I was like, what's the proof that I own this? And they're like, it's a paper. Where? Somewhere. And I was like, for real? That kind of freaked me out. The problem is in today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles and your equity is the target. How it works? Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee with your county, and boom, your home title has been transferred out of your name. Then they take out loans using your equity or even sell your property. You won't even know it's happened until you get a collection or foreclosure notice. That's why you need to stop what you're doing today and find out if you're already a victim. Use promo code TIM at HomeTitleLock.com to make sure your title is still in your name. You'll also get a free title history report plus a free 14-day trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud should happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Again, HomeTitleLock.com, promo code TIM. Shout out. Really do appreciate you guys sponsoring the show. As always, we got Cast Brew Coffee. Pick up some coffee if you haven't already. We got all these different buns. We got light roast, we got medium roast, we got dark roast. We even got Sleepy Joe Decaf. Appalachian Nights, of course, everybody's favorite. We got Ian's Graphene Dream, Luck of the Seamus, and Phil Labonte's 2 weeks till Christmas.
Get it.
Check it all out. And last but not least, become a member of our Discord server. The Culture War live event went off swimmingly. It was a lot of fun, and we're planning on expanding and doing more. We want you guys to be members so you can join the debate on stage and be involved with the next event. And our plan for the next Culture War live, of course, is going to be LibVCon Trivia Night. We'll see if we can pull this one off, because I'm willing to bet there's going to be a lot of liberals who are like, I ain't doing trivia, because either they have to admit they know they're lying or get the question wrong. I know, I'm biased. Smash the like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is Kaizen Asiedu.
What's up, Tim?
How's it going?
It's going great, man.
Who are you? What do you do?
My name is Kaizen. I'm a political and cultural commentator. People seem to like what I say, and I guess we're going to find out why.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Should be fun.
Thanks for having me.
Elaad is here.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Elaad Eliyahu. I'm a journalist and White House correspondent here at Timcast. Kaizen, what's up? It's exciting to see you. Excited to get into it with you later today. Phil, how's it going?
Hello, everybody. My name is Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and counter-revolutionary. Let's get into it.
I just want to add one more quick thing. I've got a special treat for all of you for this uncensored portion of the show. So that's going to be at 10 o'clock, rumble.com/Timcast IRL. Don't spoil it, Phil. But you can see Phil's very excited for this.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. A special thing for you guys on the uncensored portion of the show. But for now, let's get into the news. We've got this from the New York Times. Wisconsin judge indicted on charges that she helped immigrant evade agents. Judge Hannah C. Dugan was accused of helping an undocumented immigrant elude federal agents who were waiting to arrest him outside her courtroom. They say the Wisconsin judge arrested last month and accused of helping an undocumented, how about illegal immigrant? They say the indictment of Judge Hannah C. Dugan of the Milwaukee County Circuit Court was a routine but significant step in the DOJ's case against her. The Trump administration has defended the prosecution as a warning that no one is above the law, while many Democrats, lawyers, and former judges have denounced it as an assault on the judiciary. Judge Dugan has been temporarily removed from the bench by the Wisconsin Supreme Court while the case against her advances. Has indicated through a lawyer she intends to fight the charges. She's expected to appear in court on Thursday. I got to be honest, I do not see how she wins. Is she going to deny that she did this? I mean, they've got cameras in the building, I assume.
I'm just happy that she got arrested and actually indicted. Like, this is progress. There was a time where this kind of behavior would be just brushed under the rug. You wouldn't hear about it. And I think those days are gone, and it's a good thing for the United States.
Take a look at this. We have I believe we have the actual indictment here. United States of America v. Hannah C. Dugan. It says on or about April 18th, 2025, knowingly concealed EFR, a person whose arrest, a warrant, and process had been issued under the provisions of law of the United States. We've got this other paperwork. The grand jury further charges that. So what are they getting around? Did corruptly endeavor to influence, obstruct, and impede the due and proper administration of the law, under which a pending proceeding was being had before a department and agency of the United States. We do have, I believe, a photo of the criminal alien who was trying to escape from the New York Post. And then, of course, this video of Hannah C. Dugan leaving the courtroom. But she does not give a statement. So, I have no idea how she thinks she's going to fight this. Is she going to argue I did the right thing and hope for a nullification?
I mean, it's amazing how in this article, they're positioning this as this being some sort of prejudicial indictment of Dugan, when if we actually look at what she did, it's pretty straightforward. There was an illegal immigrant in a courtroom. She allowed him to exit through the non-public jury entrance. He tried to run. He literally tried to run away. And then he got tackled after he tried to escape at her assistance. So this is not political, and I don't see why it needs to be politicized at all. This is not even about a judge doing this. This is about a human being trying to help another human being escape arrest.
The fact that the news has centered on her being a judge shows that Democrats expect certain people to be above the law.
It's outrageous, too, because I feel like Democrats were reliably telling me for a while that nobody was above the law. And I think it's weird that they're calling it an attack on the judiciary because, again, if judges break the law, there's no reason that they shouldn't be able to be arrested for their crimes. However, I'm sure she knows a lot of good lawyers, seeing that she is a judge. So she might be able to wiggle her way out of this one.
I think they're just counting on people not actually reading what she did and seeing, hey, this person, Trump, I don't like Trump. Trump did this thing to this person. This person's the victim. Trump is the perpetrator. The end.
All right, so it's the third, or there's probably more than three, but it's the third that I can recall immigration hoax that we're seeing so far in the Trump administration. First, we had the Maryland man hoax. Then we had the 2 children, American citizens being deported hoax. And now we have the Wisconsin judge hoax, who is right. It's an attack on the judiciary. They didn't do anything wrong.
There is going to be a political earthquake in this country in 10 years. Because we keep talking about these hoaxes, but who really falls for them? It is the older generation. They're watching CNN, MSNBC. And, at least some of them are watching Fox News. Fox does a pretty good job. Not perfect, but pretty good. In 10 years, when these boomers aren't voting anymore, or not to be crude, I know I say this a bit, but when they're passing on, and these cable networks and these corporate news outlets can't maintain these offices and these companies, the media narrative landscape is going to flip like a glacier. It's going to be nuts, the political reckoning that we see. Overnight, these hoaxes will be gone.
And it's hard for me to blame the public for falling for some of these hoaxes, because for the average person, you don't have the time to dig in to every little nuance of every story, and you just reliably, or think you can reliably, read a headline without being misled. But it seems there is a consensus in the media to go along with so many of these immigration hoaxes.
Do you guys think that this is the phenomenon of so many people, so many people being misled by the establishment media? Do you think that that's actually something new because of the digital age, or do you think that it was just that because there are multiple outlets now?
Yeah, I don't think there's any such thing as an objective news source. I don't think there ever has been. All news sources are composed of humans. All humans have a perspective. You have a perspective. I have one. We're all subjective. And I think the difference now is because we have an open information environment, we can actually compare what the open information environment is saying versus a single source, and we see the bias. I do think that when Trump arrived on the scene, it became even more polarized because I think the establishment found him so odious that they doubled down on their bias, especially in the New York Times. I mean, I used to be on the left, and then my first realization was, oh, wow, the New York Times exclusively reports negative things about Trump. That was the first window into, oh, I thought I'm getting the truth, but I'm getting a news story.
I half agree. I want to push back a little bit because I've had this debate on subjectivity and objectivity quite a bit throughout the years in journalism. And I think the bigger question is not whether or not someone has a bias. You can be biased and objective. It just depends on your attachment to the particular story. And then the bigger question is, are you honest? Yeah. So what we often heard as an excuse for why the corporate press lies is that, well, there's no such thing as objectivity. Everybody has a point of view. Yes, but that doesn't mean you falsely frame the narrative of a story. So the way I describe it to people is, you know, if I'm outside at a diner and I see two guys get into a brawl and someone comes up to me and says, what happened? I can be objective. I can say, this guy came into that guy and took a swing at him. But what if one of the guys was my brother, right? I can still be honest, but you don't know if you want to trust what I'm saying, because I'm going to be like, that guy attacked my brother. And they're going to be like, okay, well, you know, we hear what you're saying. Maybe it's telling the truth. Maybe he's being objective. I think the bigger issue that we see in politics, the left is lying and the right is being honest. It's not perfect. Sometimes the right gets things wrong, and some people on the right do lie. But it's a tendency on the left, or I should say it's a generality on the left and sometimes on the right. You'll find that there are right-wing grifters trying to make money, and they're going to lie, and they're going to make AI garbage and whatever they have to do to get money. On the left, it's every single day. So what's the distinction between left and the right in this country? It's not policy. It's not economics. It's not abortion or gay rights. None of that matters, because I can sit down with Charlie Kirk and have different views on legislating abortion, for instance, but we will be completely honest about the circumstances in this country and the facts. So can Charlie Kirk be objective? I believe he absolutely can. Can I? I think so too. If we were presented with data and then we looked at it and said, we're going to scrutinize this data, and it said 90+% of abortions are no reason given elective, we will both agree on the terms that that is the true and correct fact. That's objective. Then we'll make an argument about our view and how we legislate to stop something like that from happening. Whereas what the liberals do is they'll crumple up. First, they'll ban you, saying statistics are offensive, racist, sexist, or otherwise. Then if somehow the information gets out, they'll make up an excuse as to why it's not really the case. They'll use manipulative phrases like Maryland man to trick you into thinking American citizens are being deported. That's not even a question of subjectivity, objectivity. That is just dishonesty.
You want to finish?
No, please go ahead.
Okay, so I agree with you that right now the left is more detached from reality than the right, and I think the right places a higher premium on truth. When I say that everyone is subjective, I don't necessarily mean that people are being dishonest, but the subjectivity gets in when we're talking about narratives, and we're talking about what facts do we focus on, what stories do we focus on. It's a matter of prioritization. So, for example, New York Times, I don't think they're fundamentally dishonest in their reporting of facts. Like, they pick facts that are true. They don't often say things that are literally untrue, but it's a selection of facts from any set of data that actually creates the dishonesty that you're talking about. And for the New York Times, which presents itself as just objectively, independently seeking the truth, they're misleading their readers, because what they're actually doing is they're prosecuting a campaign against Trump like they have been for the last 10 years and saying, we're just reporting the news. But they're not just reporting the news. They're reporting a story that they want you to buy into. So I think it happens both on the right and the left. I do think that the left seems more committed to prosecuting an agenda than the truth. So I think for them, it's like, you know, there was this clip of this woman from NPR saying sometimes the truth gets in the way. Yeah. And I actually think that was quite revealing, because to her, it's like, well, we need to do the moral thing, even at the expense of the truth. And I think people on the right tend to have a proclivity saying it needs to be the truth first and then morality after that.
Go ahead.
That real quick, that was an AOC quote as well.
Yeah,
she said something about being morally right instead of factually correct.
Do you think that part part of the situation, or part of what we're going through today, is that the left believes ridiculous things are the truth, like men can become women and women can become men. And do you think it's that they believe just insane things?
Well, I mean, I like to avoid broad categorizations of the left because, there are reasonable people on the left, and I think it's been co-opted by a fringe. But yeah, the people that you're talking about, I think for them, the truth is subjective to them. Like, they don't actually believe fundamentally in the idea of truth. And that's why you hear things like your truth, my truth. There is no your truth or my truth. There's the truth. But this worldview equates what you feel passionately about with the truth. And then as a result, a man is whatever a person feels like as a man. A woman is whatever a person feels like a woman, and it can change to them.
So I have a quick correction. That video we showed earlier actually was an old video that someone reposted, just so people know. That was right after her first arrest, not the court appearance.
So what was it? So you were talking about the way that you perceived the New York Times. What was it that kind of made you say, okay, I actually do have to stop considering myself on the left and I have to rethink my values? Because that's a big step.
Yeah. So it was 2020, and I had been a subscriber to the New York Times for probably years at that point. And I was a default Democrat. I'm Black. I grew up in New York, moved to LA, worked in tech. I was just in the tribe, and I never really thought about it that much. I wasn't that politically engaged. And it wasn't that I disagreed with the reporting, but I noticed it's just pattern recognition. I noticed that literally every time I saw a headline about Trump in my inbox, it was negative. And I don't care who you are. If you're always being told negative things about a person, you're probably not getting the whole truth, because everyone has something positive to them. And that was the moment when I decided, okay, I'm just going to unsubscribe from the New York Times and disconnect from all this stuff. And then me getting back engaged in politics happened more recently.
I wanted to follow up on something that we were talking about a little bit earlier with the dishonesty and lack of objectivity. I don't specifically think it's a left-right thing, although it might be more prevalent on the left. I think most people who are interested in politics aren't moderates, because if you're interested in it, you're likely to be on the right or the left, and they're like downstream consequences of that. And I don't think there's any lack of dishonesty or lack of objectivity on the right with like posting things that are disingenuous. So for example, like recently I saw this video of, it was Emmanuel Macron with a little tissue on the table, and then everybody on Twitter was so quick to call this like a bag of some drug or something, when it was really so obvious that it wasn't. But really, we have so many crazy perverse incentives between social media and news journalism, where people are driving, they want clicks, they want money, and that's really what sustains so many of these media companies. So I think we also need to understand those perverse incentives because it really shows how different people with different partisan leanings are more willing to go along with things when they're obviously fake or wrong, and they're clearly being dishonest about it, but willing to try to capitalize on it. So I just think that's something we should. Did you see that tissue stuff?
Yeah, of course. People were saying that it was Coke, and it was a Coke, but it was a snot rag.
Yep.
Yeah, it was some of the dumbest thing, and I think I complained about this about the last time I was on, but I think a lot of the different influencers that advance this stuff actually have disdain for you. They think you're stupid and are trying to monetize as a result off of that, and it's disgusting and gross and making us worse as a society.
Don't take it personal.
Do y'all remember?
Oh, I do that.
Do you guys remember in Trump's first term when the White House intern was walking up to get the microphone from what's his face, the CNN guy?
Acosta.
They were fighting. Yeah.
And he pulled his arm away from her. Mm-hmm. Liberals that I knew at the time, because this is like 2018 or something. So back before everyone went, further and further down the polarization lanes, I had a bunch of prominent liberals. I'll leave them unnamed, but big people with millions of subscribers. And they followed me and I followed them. And I posted the video and I'm like, clearly Jim Acosta has the mic in his hand. She's holding it and he jerks it towards him, away from her. And everyone was trying to claim that she, with her hand under it, was pulling it down or something, which just made no sense. But there was no real way to know who pulled one way or the other. And Scott Adams around the time was talking about one screen with two movies on it. So all the liberals were told, here's what happened. They watched it. They believed it. Everybody else was told something else happened. They watched it. They believed it. That has been consistently happening for a decade now. Do you guys ever see, there's this research they do where a mouth will say fa or pa, and then depending on which sound they play, you will see their mouth making that noise, and then when they turn the sound off, you will read it as if it's one sound or the other. That, we refer to this recently as information vaccination. Ian called it this, and it's a great point. He says that often when a story comes out, he immediately will contact his parents and give them the truth before the lie can reach them, because hearing the lie first will shape their perspective of the truth. That is to say, I believe it's fair to say, now this is a contentious example because honestly I don't know, that Jim Acosta he was holding the mic, he was talking, he wouldn't shut up. They said, that's your time. She went to grab the mic from him, and then he was yanking it from her as she was pulling it from him. I firmly believe that's true. But if this story, or how about the Very Fine People hoax? This is a better example. When I saw Trump give that speech, I listened to the whole thing. And I said, okay. Then the media came out and they said he called Nazis fine people. And I went, no, he didn't. He said he condemned them. What's going on? But what happens if you're like, shout out to Daniel Negreanu, the poker player who came on the show and explained the story. When he had first been told that Trump called Nazis fine people, he believed it. And then later when he saw the video, I've seen enough. Now, anytime one of his buddies would be like, Trump never said that, he'd be like, I've seen the video and I heard it. I know it. I know what I know. And he didn't want to hear anything further. And it wasn't until one dude that he knew put the phone on the table, slid it over and said, watch, and pressed play. And he went, okay. And then for the first time, he heard Trump say, and not the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. So information vaccination, getting the info to people before the media can lie about it and falsely frame it. Because what's happening now, especially with the immigration stuff, the members of Congress who have who are threatened with arrest for physically, you see this lady closed fist punch an ICE officer in the arm. I mean, you can see in the video, she hits him in the arm. CNN's not showing that video. And she's going on TV saying that none of that ever happened and there's no video of this anyway. So what happens now is the liberals are going to say, there's no video, it never happened. If you go to them and say, here's a video of them punching, they'll be like, I don't want to see it because you're a liar. So you got to get them that information first.
Yeah.
I don't know if information vaccine is the best way to try to sell it to people, but
No, I do. For liberals especially.
okay, yeah, but not for conservatives. Yeah, I don't know if RFK Jr. would be a big fan of the information vaccine. Hey,
He's the guy who's recommending the vaccine, by the way. That's what this is another hoax. The media was claiming RFK Jr. was anti-vax. And I'm like, we interviewed the guy. He's pro-vax, 100%. He was just like, we got to get more rigorous studies on these vaccines. And he was recommending them. And then sure enough, a lot of people were surprised to find out that once he gets in at HHS, he's like, I recommend everybody get the vaccine. And I'm
to be fair, I think his rhetoric has become a lot more pro-vaccine, especially his recent comments on the MMR vaccine, where he's trying to encourage more people to get it.
Agreed. But during his campaigning, he was not saying anything. Like maybe he tried walking away from his past in the campaign. All I'm saying is during the campaign, he was not anti-vax. He was critical of how they rolled out the COVID vaccine too quickly, but general vaccines he was not opposed to. And the media kept saying he was. They were just lying about it.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's jump to the next story here. Big news from the Post-Millennial. Federal judge rules Trump admin can use the Alien Enemies Act to deport illegal immigrant gang members. The court now leaves it to the political branches of government and ultimately to the people who elect those individuals to decide whether the laws and those executing them continue to reflect their will. So this is a tremendous victory for Trump. It had been stayed effectively, but now Trump is clear to use the AEA to begin deporting. So what's the argument now? Why can't Trump do what he does? How is what he's doing is wrong or illegal? What is the Democrat argument? Courts agree with Trump.
I'll give you the argument just for the sake of steel manning it. So I think the concern that people have is not so much whether the executive can do this, but whether he should do this, right? Because if you look at the Alien Enemies Act, it specifically contemplates the idea of war or an invasion by some sort of national adversary as a reason to invoke the Alien Enemies Act, not just because you want to get illegal immigrants out of the country. Now, I would counter that the way that Trump is looking at this is, okay, Tren de Aragua and some of these gangs, they're actually sponsored by the Venezuelan government and Maduro. So that would be the reason why he calls it an invasion.
But they don't have to be governmental. The Alien Enemies Act covers any organized group.
Any organized group, but it's like a nation-sponsored one. So it's an interpretive act at the end of the day, and the concern is how he is choosing to interpret. That said, I think it's healthy to just say, hey, this is actually not the role of the judiciary to decide what the interpretation the executive branch applies to acts like this should be, Because if we do that, then what we have is a bunch of unelected judges deciding what the executive branch's policy should be. And that's just not sustainable, whether you like the executive branch or not. And the check on the executive branch is supposed to be voting, not judges blocking everything that they do because of policy disagreements. So I think there's a healthy check on the judiciary, and we have it. It's long overdue.
I think that the laws in our country have been abused for so long. So, for example, illegal aliens have been abusing our laws and abusing our ways of deporting them. Democrats have also been obstructing different laws in the way that we are trying to deport them. So, I understand that you think that he's, or at least your argument is saying that he's kind of trying to push the bounds of what this law is saying to try to achieve his goals. But I don't blame him for doing that, given the current political climate and political situation that we're in right now. Illegal immigrants feel free to break the laws of our country. Our executive actions aren't deporting the immigrants such that we don't have the means to do it in our law system. So I think that's why he's resorting to different plans like this. And I mean, frankly, if the ends justify the means here, and this is an effective way of getting Tren de Aragua terrorists out of our country, then it is what it is.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. Again, I was proxying the opposite argument. But yeah, I think the concern is just that he keeps things legal. Because what happened is the Democrats basically, it was like a sin of omission, right? Because they just didn't enforce the law, which is essentially illegal to not enforce the law. But it's much more abstract, right? Because how do you address a negative?
And then there's sanctuary cities on top of that. So there's so many of these different workarounds where I guess laws don't matter if you're in New York City or LA.
Yeah. And I'm glad that he's actually invoking the Alien Enemies Act specifically for violent gangs, because that's the situation where you need to address this.
How is he doing this? What am I missing here? If it applies to nations we're at war with or hostile nations, how is he applying it to terrorist organizations?
So I think the argument is that Tren de Aragua is state-sponsored gang, and he thinks that Maduro has
But we're not at war with Venezuela either.
No, but we don't need to be at war. It's only been invoked in times of war, but it also contemplates a national invasion where war is not actually declared. So that's, obviously they went deep in the fucking annals here to find out what kind of clause could they use to deal with this situation. And it speaks to, as you said, Elaad, the fact that we have an environment that has been so disregarding of the law that now we're going back hundreds of years to find laws that we can use to enforce the law. It's ridiculous.
The Aliens Enemies Act of 1798. There's so many also different laws on our country's books that if you want to find a law that will help justify whatever political thing that you're trying to achieve, I'm sure you could find it in the hundreds of years of history in our Constitution. And then again, it feels as though so many different people in our political class aren't even following the laws.
Okay, it isn't only nations. So that's why I was confused, because I thought that it could be any invasion. So it says, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled, that whenever there shall be a declared war between the United States and any foreign nation or government, or any invasion or predatory incursion shall be perpetrated, attempt, or threatened against the territory of the United States by any foreign nation or government, and the President of the United States shall make public proclamation of the event, all native citizens, denizens, or subjects of hostile nations or government, being males of the age of 14 years upwards, who shall be within the United States and not actually naturalized, shall be liable to be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed as alien enemies. It is, let's see, it's interesting. I guess the interesting interpretation is it says whenever there's a war or any invasion or predatory incursion is perpetrated.
I think the fact that it's the phrase or the wordage, predatory invasion or that really does classify what's going on. The federal government, the Biden administration really just it just ignored the law, and it was such a dramatic consequence that you have to do something like this to solve the problem. There's no precedent to have that many people come into the United States in such a short amount of time and have no intention of assimilating to the lifestyle and the culture of the U.S. And I think it's important that the current administration do something to fix the damage that was done.
It's so fascinating how we're kind of choosy with which laws we decide to enforce or not. It's also illegal in our country to employ illegal immigrants. I'm looking at the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986. I don't think illegal immigrants are having any trouble actually finding legal business too, because we want them on our farms to work there legally, as I understand. I actually asked Stephen Miller about this, and he said that we're actually going to we're doing a lot more work site enforcement. But as far as I understand, illegals can't work legally at companies, but there's still millions of illegals in our country working at these different companies, and we just choose not to enforce the law here.
We've
Sanctuary cities, we choose not to enforce the law here. I'm sure there's a ton of other things, not only on immigration here, but that's the fascinating thing.
When it comes to stuff like employing illegal immigrants, we've talked about that here. If you employ an illegal immigrant, you should lose your business. The federal government should absolutely just expropriate your property. If you've been found to knowingly and intentionally hire illegal immigrants because you're trying to skirt tax law or whatever law, the government should take your business from you.
So just to clarify everything we've gone through, we were all correct. The arguments, as you were saying, Kaizen, is that these people are state-sponsored. Venezuela is effectively releasing them from the prisons and then sending them our way, which constitutes an incursion or predatory invasion. It doesn't need to be that we are declared at war with Venezuela, just that Venezuela is sponsoring an incursion or predatory invasion, which Trump has declared, and that's why the court has ruled this does align with the Alien Enemies Act.
I think also part of what the Trump administration is trying to achieve here is actually a little bit of fear in those who are considering making the trip to immigrate here illegally. So that's why he wants to show you might get, if you come here, you're a gangster, you come here illegally and break the law, you might be sent to a different prison in El Salvador, a brutal prison, if you're willing to do those illegal actions in our country.
Part of the reason why we should come down on businesses is because we want people that are here illegally to leave of their own volition.
Exactly.
Because it's difficult to do all of the the due process stuff that we're supposed to do. Even just having everybody go through the normal administrative process is a ton of manpower and a ton of time. The more difficult you make it for people to stay here illegally, the better it is for the country, because you don't have to have jackboot thugs go, which is one of the things the left is terrified of. If you make it exceedingly difficult for illegal immigrants to stay here, to work here, just to do their day-to-day business, of their life here, have them leave of their own volition, that's way better for America. And it's better for the illegal immigrants, because then they don't have to get arrested. Then they don't have to get, maybe roughed up from the cops. It's better for the communities that they live in, because you don't have police going in and, getting into interactions with the population, because anytime the police get into interactions with the population, there is the possibility of some kind of tension, possibly a crime, possibly someone gets into a fight with the cops. You don't want any of it. Just make it hard for them to be here, because they go there on their own way.
Well said. And it's funny because basically what we're saying is we just need to enforce the law.
100%.
And do so consistently. And I don't think anyone wants to see masked ICE stormtroopers busting into homes and screaming women and children out of their homes. You're shaking your head.
Are they illegal or are they legal?
Well, whether they're here illegally or not, I don't want to see that happen to another human being. So rather than having to do this by force, and if we have 10 to 20 million people, it just doesn't scale. Let's change the incentive model by enforcing the law properly so that people leave of their own accord. I don't know. Did you guys see that story about Trump promising $1,000 to anyone who self-deports?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Once you're gone and confirmed to be in your home nation, they deposit $1,000.
I love that. Now, $1,000 is probably not enough, but if it costs us $17,000 to do this by force, and it costs us less than $17,000 to incentivize someone to just leave of their own accord on their own timing to a country of their choice, let's do that so that we can have a situation where, yes, we're treating people humanely, and we're also sustaining the community that people want to come to. Because the reason that they want to come here is because we enforce the law, and that's why America's great.
We just got to make sure the border is very secure, lest they keep coming back to get $1,000.
And also, you know what? If you're in Peru, $1,000 is a whole lot more than $1,000 in the United States.
Also true.
Kaizen, I wanted to ask, you said you were on the left before. When did the switch happen, and was there a certain something that happened that kind of initiated that switch?
July 13th, 2024. The day that Trump almost got assassinated.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I had already...
recent. That's very recent.
Yeah. So I had been questioning what I'd been told about politics since the start of 2024, because that's when I started to just pay attention. I had not been a political person at all.
Have you ever voted before that?
Yeah, I always voted, but it always been a Democrat by default. It was not really that conscious of a decision. And the first thing I noticed actually was when Trump got hit with the felony charge. And I saw how excited people were. And I also saw that people didn't know what they were excited about, because no one actually knew what the felony was for. And when I actually looked into the case, I realized, okay, first of all, this thing just doesn't sound like a felony to me. Just intuitively, him paying $100,000 to a porn star doesn't actually bother me ethically at all. And that seemed like pretty normal politics. Like people get endorsements or they pay people to be on their side. And, you know, if he cheated on his wife, that's an ethical breach. But the act itself didn't bother me. I was like, why is this a felony to begin with? And I looked at the broader pattern of it felt like for every single week, even after Trump was out of office, there was a new story about a subpoena or tax documents. And then I thought, wait, the terminus of all of this is this? Like, that's what he's getting hit with a felony for, not all the things that you said he was doing in business. And then I started to realize, hey, people are being emotionally led rather than logically led. And they've already made up their mind about this guy. So they concluded everything that they hear about him that's negative is true. The second thing was when I saw Biden senile on the debate stage. And it's like, you know, Tim was talking earlier about honesty and subjectivity and objectivity. It was just objectively true. The guy was not well possessed of his mental faculties. And it felt like I was being told not to believe my lying eyes when I saw that the guy he's clearly early onset dementia or something. And then I realized, okay, I don't trust Trump yet, but I definitely don't trust the Democratic Party. I definitely don't trust these people who are telling me that our president is sharp as a tack. And I was just concerned, like, who is running the country then? Like, this guy is negotiating with world leaders. And then I was honestly still scared because I had so much conditioning. And remember, like, on the left, believing that Trump should run the country, it equates you with being a bad person. Like, that's how deep it was. I was afraid of getting canceled by my community, my family, like everyone. And then the day that he nearly got assassinated, I just felt my heart leap out of my chest. And I thought to myself, wow, that is the realest political moment I've ever seen.
That was such a powerful moment.
It was just real. Yeah. Like when he got up and he said, fight, 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 I thought to myself, you can't fake that. Not even thought to myself, I felt it. And actually, that was the first day that I recorded a video on the subject. It went viral, and then my whole life changed after that.
Can I ask, did you get pushback from your peers, family, and community as a result of your support for President Trump? I know you're obviously black. President Trump had a lot of different initiatives to try to get more support from the black community. He was more successful in doing it with black men than black women. Can you tell me a little bit more about, you know, the pushback you got in your community, and are you seeing more of them become Republican and Trump fans?
Wait, I'm black?
I think so. I don't know.
Yeah, of course, man. Like, and it's not fun, right? Because you want to be liked. Everyone likes to be liked. And also, I realized that it wasn't even about what I was saying. It was just about what people's beliefs were. And that's where the pushback was coming from. Because I wasn't shy about my opinions, obviously, because I shared them online. And at first I was scared, like, okay, what if I miss something and he is a secret white supremacist and he is trying to put us back in chains and all of this stuff. And consistently, the arguments that I saw were emotional arguments. They just weren't very good. And I knew that I did my research. And actually, one of the interesting things is, I think this political awakening that I had and many other people are having is only possible now because with AI and social media and these tools, we can actually process a lot of information and process out the nonsense and get to the truth ourselves. Whereas before, we were reliant on these single points of failure in the media. So yeah, I got pushback and I went through my own journey with it. But honestly, what I also saw was a lot of people come out of the woodwork and say, I'm so glad you're saying this because I was thinking it and was afraid to say it. And that actually encouraged me to keep going. And yeah, I think in the black community, yeah, there's a lot of people who are just scared. And that's where it's coming from. It's just genuine fear. And I understand where it's coming from. But I'll remind people, before Trump got into politics, he was the man in every community. Black people loved him. He's friends with Nelson Mandela and Mike Tyson and Michael Jackson. And like this whole Trump is a white supremacist thing was very new. It only happened after he got into politics. So I just encourage people to like look back in your memory banks and wonder, when did you start believing this stuff anyway and why? Because if Trump didn't get into politics, I think he would still just be the apprentice guy, the picture of the American dream, and someone that people looked up to like before.
But has his efforts have been paying off in the black community, do you think?
It's tough, man. I think, unfortunately, no. Like, that would be my guess. And it's not because of what he's doing, but the way that everything gets positioned. Like, for instance, when we talk about DEI, anytime people think DEI, they think DEI pro-black people, removing DEI anti-black people, when of course there's nuance to that. I think that a lot of these DEI policies have actually been harmful to black people. I think this whole idea of a DEI hire has come from black people being promoted because of the color of our skin. That's not helpful for Black people. I think it's actually belittling. I think it's disempowering to think.
I want to ask
been
about
put in
something more
position.
specific than DEI, because in the way it manifests, because I wanted to have something tangible here, like affirmative action. So, for example, some Black people have argued that it's actually harmful. I feel like Thomas Sowell's actually argued that, or who's the Supreme Court? Clarence Thomas actually wrote about this in his book, that when he went to college and when he went to law school, he believed that everybody looked at him differently because he thought that everybody only thought he was there as a result of affirmative action. But others say that no, Black people were dispossessed and they actually needed this leg up and statistically couldn't compete as well and were underrepresented in a lot of these colleges and in positions of power and wealth. So, like, do you understand those two arguments? And what do you think about the...
Yeah. So I actually went to Harvard. I'm Black. I'm also first generation. So I'm in this interesting position because a lot of the Black people who are supposed to be getting help by these policies are not first generation immigrants. They're descendants from slaves way back. Me, I don't have that trauma in my lineage. I don't see any reason why I need affirmative action. But in America, it's like, oh, well, you're Black, so you need a leg up. So when I went to Harvard, it's like, I like to think I would have gotten in no matter what, but I don't know.
Did you have some imposter syndrome and feel as though others didn't think you belonged there as a result of affirmative action and DEI?
It's always a question. I don't personally feel like I didn't deserve to be there, but it's always a question. And I know people some people are thinking it. And I'll actually tell you a funny story. After I made my shift from the left more toward the right, I consider myself independent, but you know how it goes. I had someone who knew me personally, knew me well, who was a liberal, lash out at me because of something I said and threw the fact that I went to Harvard as a Black man in my face.
Wow.
And basically tried to imply that I got into Harvard because I'm Black. I was like, wait, you're supposed to be the side that's looking out for me, and you're trying to insult me and take away my achievements. This whole worldview, it's like you do things that sound good, but I don't think they actually have a good impact. Now, do I think that Black people in this country want help? Yeah. Would I like to see Trump help anyone who is in a position where they don't feel like they have opportunity? Of course. But a lot of these policies, they sound good on their face, but they actually have a psychological impact or a very tangible impact that's quite negative for these communities.
I guess, do you think you'd have a different perspective if you were an African descendant of slaves as opposed to an African migrant, a first generation African migrant from Africa now?
I might, but then the question would be, okay, well, why aren't we spending as much effort on the starting line for Black Americans as we are on the finish line? Why is it that when someone is 18, they're just artificially shoved into an employment role or an admissions role that they just don't have as good qualifications at, rather than in K through 12, we're making sure that we're giving kids good education in inner city schools, or we're making sure that they're not being exposed to environmental toxins that are retarding their development. Like, that's what we need to actually do. But instead, we do the sledgehammer, most obvious seeming solution that doesn't actually solve the root causes of the problem.
Absolutely. For the record, I agree with you. I just wanted to steel man the argument.
You just hit the nail on the head with a hammer. Yeah. This is all finish line stuff.
Yeah.
And you've nailed it. They're trying to drag people who can't run across the finish line instead of going to the beginning when everyone's training and make sure everybody's got that training program and that access so that they can run on their own merit.
Exactly.
Amazing.
And then at the end of the day, what happens? It actually just breeds more racial resentment, because now you have in schools, and Harvard just went through this. They just had to, they're still fighting over affirmative action, but you have, Asian kids or Jewish kids or white kids who feel like, okay, well, I didn't cause these initial starting conditions that my Black and brown peers are dealing with, but now I don't have anything to do except give them my spot. And what's that going to do? It's going to breed resentment. It actually creates more racism because, newsflash, discrimination always creates more discrimination. So the solution to discrimination is equality, not saying, oh, because this group was discriminated against, we need to discriminate against this other group to get something back to them. It just keeps on going in cycles. So the only way to stop this is with principled approaches and figure out, hey, how do we give the people who need the help that they need in the ways that they actually need it early, not at the end here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Spot on there.
But then what we end up with is a Democratic Party that doesn't want to solve a problem. They want a wedge issue they can continually use. So they need to do half measures that make it look like they're doing something. Affirmative action. Yeah, we'll get you into college. See, look at all the great things I'm doing for you. But they don't actually want these problems to be solved. They don't, the Democrats love that Roe v. Wade got overturned. They're like, wow, we're going to be able to, we have a wedge issue now for every election. They could have codified Roe v. Wade anytime they wanted. Whenever they had during Obama, they could have done it. They didn't do it. The Republicans could have got rid of Obamacare several times. They could do it right now. They won't do it. This is what politicians do.
Yep, because the goal is to stay in power, not to actually use your power to make a solution.
Let's jump to this story from the Post-Millennial. CNN analyst says white South Africans should go back to Europe, indicates genocide is what establishes refugee status. This is actually an amazing clip. Let's play it.
Okay. So if you think about the history of South Africa, it being under an apartheid system, where I think it is 80% of the population that are Black Africans only own 4% of the land. That is because they were put in shanty towns and moved into areas where they had no rights. And so 30 plus years ago, they went through the apartheid system ended, and they reformed their constitution under the great leader of Nelson Mandela. And that allowed for a racial reconciliation, one that this country has yet to do. But South Africa did it, and they reformed their constitution, and part of that is that the people who are native to that land deserve their rightful land back. That is not what the Afrikaners actually want to have happen, which are the white Africans, and so who are not originally from Africa, who colonized South Africa also. And so that is what they are saying is discrimination. Now, if the Constitution in South Africa is discriminatory, they have their checks and balances in that land, just like we do. And that is for them to. So if the Afrikaners don't actually like the land, they can leave that country.
They are. They're leaving to come here.
No. They can
These refugees are coming here.
They can actually leave and go to where their native land is, which is probably Germany.
Are you against them coming here?
Holland, probably. Holland.
Are you
yes.
against them coming here?
I'm against the hypocrisy of this administration.
No, that's not the question. The question is, are you against them coming here?
If there was actually a genocide happening, like there is in other places in Sudan, in the Congo, I'm not opposed for Congo.
So just to address her point, these people, she says, could go back to their ancestral homeland. You know what's really fascinating is I look at everything we're dealing with, the solutions proposed and the mechanisms put in place by Democrats, and my only conclusion is, wow, these Democrats are racist. And I'll tell you why. If the worldview of the left is decolonize, what does that produce? Honestly, if she's saying white people go back to Germany, okay, so all the white people go back to Europe, all the black people go back to Africa, literal nations of segregation. That's what they're advocating for. Yeah. And then I'm thinking about, well, what are they doing here? They're opening the floodgates so that unskilled labor can flood into this country. What will that do? It will create competition among the low-skilled base of most poor people in this country. Not white, but most poor people in this country are white because white people are the majority of the country. You then bring in a whole bunch of people from Central and South America and even some in Africa who are going to compete against those people, and you will create racism. I think that's what they want to have happen.
Well, I mean, if they're working from an ideologically leftist position, then yes. So because there is no longer revolutionary energy in the working class, they have moved. This is all Herbert Marcuse from the 50s. But he said that there was no, because capitalism delivers the goods, capitalism gives a good life to people. There was no more revolutionary energy in the working class. So what they needed to do was they needed to go to this is Mark Hughes talking. They needed to go to the ghettos and get people that were the racial minorities and have those people basically stoke racial tensions to get them to engage in revolutionary activities in the United States because capitalism works.
This lady from CNN is so dishonest, and that's because she's saying something that I don't think she actually believes. She doesn't think that people, if you think there's genocide happening in the country, that you should go back to your country. Because guess what? She wouldn't apply that to anybody here. She would say that there's... Yeah, exactly. She would never apply that to any of the immigrants in the United States. But no, in South...
No. They're not immigrants. These Afrikaners have been there for hundreds of years.
So for the black people who have been here for hundreds of years and have been oppressed, right, and undermined and been treated as second-class citizens, she wouldn't tell them, oh, just go back to Africa.
Of course not.
And that's why she's extremely dishonest. And this isn't an argument that she'd make because she doesn't believe in it.
And I guarantee you actual white supremacists would look at her and say, ma'am, you are correct. Can I pay for your trip?
Jared Taylor's probably looking at this woman and going, yes, ma'am. Like, yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Well,
They want all the white people to go back to Europe and reestablish Europe.
And they want all of the non-whites out of America. If she were consistent, but she's not, and she's just making that argument to throw it in this guy's face.
Tim makes a really good point. The end result of what she's talking about is ethnostates, which is which is something that the left consistently says is a terrible thing. That's part of the reason why they hate Israel, is because they say Israel is an ethnostate and ethnostates are bad. Well, if ethnostates are bad, then why are you telling people to go back to their countries of origin, and why are you only doing it to white people? Because you don't hear them telling people of color to go back to their countries of origin.
Unfortunately, I think she makes a really bad argument and she could make a much better argument here, which is that, hey, okay, let's say that we consider it a moral imperative as Americans to protect these people who are being racially persecuted in South Africa, which I believe is happening. I do believe that there's anti-white discrimination in South Africa. There's this video of the leader of the third most popular party in South Africa literally saying, "Kill all the Boers," which is
that
white
video
farmers.
of them in that stadium.
Yeah, so I don't know obviously the intimate details of what's going on in South Africa, but I take it at face value when they say that something is going on. Maybe not a white genocide, but something is going on. Obviously, these people left their land for a reason.
Well, I think
the argument.
4%.
Let me just finish 1 second. I think the argument she should be making is, okay, well, let's protect people consistently who are dealing with racial persecution in their land, because this is happening in Ethiopia. It's happening in China, the Uyghur Muslims. It's happening. I think it's happening in Afghanistan with the Hazara. Yeah, it's happening all over the place. And what I don't like about this is Trump not making a transparency policy and principled stance on, hey, we protect people who are being persecuted from anywhere so the doors are open. Because what he did in January is said, we're not going to open the door to refugees at all. Now he's saying this specific group of refugees is being allowed. Now, to be clear, I don't think he's doing it because they're white, because in that case, he would allow the Ukrainians in. And he's been talking about expelling the Ukrainians as recently as last month. I do think he is protecting them because they are being targeted because they're white, which is different. And I think it's important to deal with anti-white racism because it's real and it doesn't get enough attention. That said, I actually think he is creating more distrust by not laying out a policy. It's like, hey, we protect people from any kind of racial persecution across planet Earth, not just people who are being targeted because they're white. That's the argument she should be making, and instead, she's actually undermining her case.
I also don't want to beat around the bush here at all. I think the reason why people care about this story, the reason why the people care about the track meet stabbing story, the reason why people care about that Shiloh story of the woman yelling the N-word at this child allegedly, is because it's a black and white issue and people are using this to stoke racial tension, and that's why it's extra sensationalized.
It's a backlash.
Yeah, I'm not. So, I feel like we need to acknowledge that people care more about these stories because there are black and white people involved. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the white guy is arguing obviously pro South Africa, the black woman's arguing that that they shouldn't be brought here. So I feel like we can't miss that. Also, I was at the White House when Stephen Miller was being asked about it again, and he's a white guy and he was being asked by a black reporter about this. I feel like we can't overlook the racial dynamics here, and to not mention them, I think, is missing a dynamic here at play. And I think it would be different if they weren't white.
It is the norm on the planet Earth for people to be racist. And it is only in a tiny blip of American history and Western civilization where there's been an active effort to suppress racism. The left, the woke left, and all of their whatever, ancillary groups have been trying to return the world to how it used to be. Nation states based on race, racial tribalism. That's what they advocate for here, and they're going to continue to advocate for it.
Can I add one more layer of hypocrisy? There's an alleged genocide happening in Gaza, right? No, none of these guys have been arguing for them to be brought over to Europe or America as refugees. I would hate that. I do not want not one Palestinian refugee to be brought to the United States. Frankly, I don't think any refugee should be brought over from the Middle East. I think I'm saying, so this lady, right, she was saying that we should bring in refugees from areas where genocides are occurring, right? But the left never argues that the Palestinians should leave Gaza, right? right? They're saying that they need to stay there, and UNRWA actually exists so they can continue existing there.
That's the
They have to
response.
stay there. Actually, it's immoral if they'd leave, right? So, like again, the layers of hypocrisy.
No, it's a good point. Say to this lady, hey, look, Trump said that he wanted to make Mara Gaza. How about we bring all of the Palestinian people to the United States?
I don't even want to joke around about that. Like, I wouldn't even want to troll about that. I think that would be such a
They would never say yes to that.
Yeah, I mean, I also think we already see the consequences of some immigration from the Middle East and how our lack of values being compatible has manifested in our country.
I actually want to go back to something you said earlier, Elaad, about the racial dynamic, because, yeah, that's clearly what's happening. Obviously, it didn't start with Carmelo, but in recent memory, it started with Carmelo and then Shiloh and now this, right? And I think what is happening is we're seeing this discriminatory loop play out, where Black people have felt discriminated against historically, which is obviously the case. And in response, a lot of the left has been trying to deal with that discrimination by discriminating against other groups. So now white people have felt discriminated against, and when they see that Black people are allowed to say and do whatever we want, and say that Carmelo is somehow just acting in self-defense and he deserves $1 million for his legal fund, and not also simultaneously saying, hey, he killed a kid, and that's just morally bad irrespective of color, then of course white people are going to engage in an equal and opposite response because there's hypocrisy on both sides.
I think you could even, it goes back so far, but a case that comes to mind was even in the OJ case, the Black community refuses to acknowledge the guilt of OJ Simpson, and Black people writ large were happy to see him get off despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary, that he should have been found guilty. So I mean, Black people aren't unique with their in-group preferences.
But what we get from the left is you had this liberal society in the United States, and I mean that in the philosophical sense, where a bunch of white people were like, we don't want to be racist. And so the norms of this country were largely like, yeah, racism is bad, don't do that. Then you had, with the OJ case, Black individuals who were collectively Black, meaning they found identitarian, as it were, that their political ideas were rooted in their race. What the woke left does is they tell these people, white people are all secretly white supremacists, and they're doing everything to hold you back so that they can inflame the identitarian conflict. For whatever reason, I don't know. I think they're largely racist. And if you trace the history of the Democratic Party, you might be shocked to find, indeed, they may have always been.
Yeah. Yeah. And ironically, I mean, I agree. Everyone has a degree of racism. Everyone.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the actual solution, instead of policing people's thoughts, is to get it out in the open and expose people to one another. Because once people actually interact with each other, like, oh, okay, this is like a person. Because racism is fundamentally about dehumanization. But instead, what we do is we cancel people for anything that even has a whiff of not even racism, but any kind of racial preference at all. And I think that's ridiculous. Like, as you said, Black people have an in-group preference. White people have an in-group preference. Every group has an in-group preference.
I'll say it, Jewish people have an in-group preference.
Obviously, yeah. Obviously. Now, it's okay to have a preference. It's okay to have a preference. It's not okay to dehumanize people on the other side of your preference. But let's make sure we have distinctions between the two so we're not calling everything racism, because you can't actually spot racism when it's actually happening.
The things I have heard Catholics say of Protestants, oh boy.
Oh, yeah.
The point that you're making, that was something that I heard Muhammad Ali talking about in the 60s. He was saying, look, I want to live around Black people. White people want to live around white people. There's nothing wrong with it. And it's like, to even say that nowadays is very controversial. You know, for if someone were to say, well, you know, it's normal for people to want to live around people like them. That's something that is really will get people like, oh, how can you say that? But then you look at the way that like neighborhoods end up, and people naturally kind of do that. Chinatown, Little Italy, that's a very normal thing for human beings to do.
When Chicago elected Brandon Johnson, I think his name is right, I looked, being from Chicago, I pulled up the electoral map, and I noticed something based on the voting patterns. So I pulled up the race makeup of the neighborhoods of Chicago, and I compared the map side by side, and lo and behold, what would you find? Every racial demographic voted for the mayoral candidate who was their race.
Of course.
No joke. There was one deviant. There was one outlier. So in the Latino area, you look at the election, number 1, Latino guy. Number 2, Latino guy. Number 3, white guy. You go to the black neighborhood, this is what was fascinating. In the black community in Chicago, the top 3 candidates, I think 4 or 5, were all black, even though most of those people they were voting for were nowhere near frontrunners. So there was this one white dude who was expected to be likely one of the winners. He was polling really, really well. They didn't vote for him at all. The white areas, not the suburbs, but the white areas of Chicago that are, not just generally white, voted for the white guy. The only neighborhood that didn't was Loyola, which is where the university was. And it's largely white, and it voted for Brandon Johnson, putting him over the edge. This is a city where no one actually cared about the policies of the individual or what the city was going to build. All they cared about was the person who was in charge was the same race as them. That's terrifying.
Yeah. You remember that Obama clip? I'm sure you guys saw it, where he was chastising black men for not voting for Kamala and saying that, oh, she grew up like you. And
It's like,
it was incredibly condescending because the implication was, hey, you should vote for this person because they look like you, not because they'll do right by you.
Right.
And that's a problem with tribalism. It hurts everyone, right? When you're this tribal, you actually will do things that self-sabotage merely because someone looks like you, which is ridiculous. So, yeah, I think, look, we need to acknowledge the reality of this discrimination in both directions here. And in order to stop the discrimination, we have to focus on equality, not promoting people who are in some sort of underprivileged class that we've now elevated to privilege because they've been oppressed more.
I want to jump to this clip from the Joe Rogan Experience. This is fascinating. In this clip, Jillian Michaels is appearing on a show, and Joe and Jillian both say they were hoaxed by the Maryland man lie. Check this out.
Saying, oh my God, they deported a Maryland man and a father, because that's what I was reading in the news.
Same.
And then you get into it and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, hold on. And then they released the dash cam footage, the police footage of when they arrested him. Not dash cam, whatever the cops are wearing.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I thought the exact same thing.
It's crazy, but it's just like you can't just go on narratives, because these narratives are just designed to make the Trump administration look like monsters.
I was giving an interview to this woman from the New York Times. And she's like, but don't you see this? And I was like, I do see it, and I don't understand it, and I wish it would be different. But, but then you get into the lesser evils. I wrote her back, and I was like, I don't agree with my previous position based on the current information available to me now.
Yeah, it seems like he was a gang member. But then there was that gay hairdresser that seems like he just got roped up.
I know. And what I have learned so far, because I've really been trying to get to the bottom of that one, because I don't understand why the left isn't leaning on that one.
Right.
The other guy beats his wife, suspected trafficker. You want to be outraged? This guy is a gay hairdresser. I guess he committed. I was listening to Tim Pool talk about this immigration fraud. So listen, that
but
guy's a tough one.
He doesn't belong in an El Salvador prison.
I agree with you completely.
Also, he's not even from El Salvador. Which is...
So breaking this down, the one thing I'll say is, I will clarify just in case I spoke poorly. My argument on the gay hairdresser was that if he entered the country illegally through the southern border with the intention of falsely claiming asylum so he could just be an economic migrant here, that would be fraud. However, I do agree. I mean, it is fascinating the left isn't leaning on that story because we don't have a lot of details about it. He was adjudicated to be a MS-13 gang member. I'm sorry, was it MS-13 or Tren de Aragua? He has the crowns.
MS-13.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the hairdresser?
Hairdresser.
The hairdresser, I think, had the crowns.
He had the crowns on his wrist. And so there is a challenge there. I even asked the Secretary Noem about this. But anyway, more to the point, what I found fascinating with this clip is it has been 10 years of the Trump era, and still to this day, Joe, and I mean this with no disrespect, of all people, read the news and thought it was true that this guy was just from Maryland. That was the purpose of the Maryland man hoax. So the two things that I wanted to get out on this one with this segment, the reason why I want to talk about this, guys, their strategy, the Maryland man hoax, was working. They were convincing people that this guy, I'm going to say again, Phil, I think you asked this earlier in the show, if the left just believes crazy things. Now you asked that, right?
Yep.
Is that why we have this culture war? And I largely believe that is true. The example being Hassan Piker. I know I bring him up because this is a really great example. He genuinely believed this guy was from Maryland. I would be mad too if the news came out that Trump rounded up an American citizen and sent him to a El Salvadoran prison. I'd be saying like, what do you mean you're not getting him back? What, this is crazy. But then it's like, oh, he's Salvadoran. Oh, he was here illegally. Oh, they found him to be a gang member. Oh, he was arrested with gang members. Oh, he beats his wife on multiple occasions. And he was deported due to administrative error. So it wasn't a crime. It was a mistake. What's the problem? That was the goal of their hoax. But I want to stress, thanks to all of you guys, everybody who watches this show, and the work of all of the alternative media space calling out the Maryland man hoax, we've shattered that narrative. We have shattered their attempt to lie. And you can see now Jillian Michaels saying she called back the New York Times and said, I don't stand by that anymore. I take back. Amazing.
So you information vaccinated Jillian Michaels? How's it feel, Dr. Tim?
I don't think I did, actually. I think they both said they believed it.
So it's antibiotic, because then she said after she watched you.
Yes, there we go.
So,
but I do want to
like
stress, because she did say I was listening to Tim Pool, and I guess he committed immigration fraud. I'm like, whoa. My argument is, like, the reason why we deport these people is they illegally enter the country through the southern border, then afterwards try and falsely claim asylum when they don't actually need it. If he came from Venezuela and was in Mexico, Mexico's awesome. Guys, have you been to Mexico?
Yeah.
no.
Have you? No, Phil?
And I don't want to
It
go.
is awesome. Where in Mexico did you go?
I went to Mazunte.
Oh, wow. That sounds
Mazunte's
cool.
sick.
Yeah.
Is that just resort areas? I think resort areas in Mexico might be awesome, but Mexico proper probably
Well, I've
sucks.
also been to
No,
Tijuana.
no,
and
no,
I
no,
did
no.
not like Tijuana, but I love Mazunte. I almost moved there.
Is that a resort area or?
It's not resort. I mean, at least at the time it wasn't. It's just like a small beach town.
I went to one of the resort areas. I think it was Temecula. I'm not sure. That might be wrong, though. But I also went to Mexico City. I've been to Aguascalientes. I went to Monterrey.
You've been everywhere. You played everywhere.
played
Look, I'll just say this.
Oh, you toured there,
Obviously, there's bad crime-ridden cartel areas in Mexico, but nobody goes like, oh, I don't know, America sucks. Don't go to Detroit. It's like, no, America's great. Here's where you go. Mexico's got great places. My point being, this Venezuelan guy who travels from Venezuela through Central America, through Mexico, all these countries, claiming, oh, I'm being persecuted in my home country. Okay, Mexico's right there, bro. They got Buffalo Wild Wings. It's fantastic. Why don't you stay there? Why did you illegally enter the United States? My argument is, I would argue that is fraud, not that he was convicted or charged with having committed fraud.
Can I actually just, we talked about this Judge Dugan case where she tried to help this illegal immigrant escape. And now we're talking about this case where people are rallying around Abrego Garcia rather than the hairdresser. And there's this very strange, I want to get you guys' thoughts on this thesis. There's this very strange worldview on parts of the left where they celebrate the worst of them.
Yeah.
And they actually shun the best of them. Right. So, like, they pushed RFK away. They pushed Tulsi Gabbard away. Today, I don't know if you guys saw this David Hogg thing.
Yes.
I don't have a super high of opinion of them, but from the things I've heard is like, okay, there's some sanity left on the left. And
They're kicking him out now.
They kick him out too. It's like, you guys are actually self-defeating. This whole worldview is self-defeating, and no one is actually responsible for their own decision. If you're a criminal, it's probably because you were just disadvantaged. You're not responsible for anything if you had bad starting conditions. And yeah, I think it's very strange, and I think Jillian correctly observed, why are they rallying against this around this guy when they have a better alternative right next to him?
So I think it's actually a political strategy to try to pick one of the worst peoples to try to open up the Overton window as far as you can go. I think for the gay hairdresser, it might have been too simple of an issue. For this other guy, they were trying to really have people sympathize with a gang member, but that really widens the Overton window and allows them to do more.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
The fact that he was a gang member was the intent, so that they could create a scenario where people would have to, they wanted Democrats to be tribally defending a gang member.
Yeah. And then you can justify anything. If a gang member is not responsible for his crimes, then who's responsible for anything?
Illegal gang members deserve full due process like they're American citizens.
Let's think about the strategy. The strategy would be, okay, if they go with the gay hairdresser guy, then the argument is, okay, Trump can deport all the criminals.
Everybody worse.
So if they go with the worst criminal, first you say he's a Maryland man. All the liberals then defend him. Then when the news breaks that he's a criminal, which the Democrats and the prominent liberals want to happen, they then say it's not about whether he's a criminal. Like you said, it's about due process. The liberals will tribally then double down and say it is fine. And this will shift the Overton window towards we must protect MS-13 gang members because they deserve rights like everybody else.
And then they'll gaslight you. Oh, it barely said MS-13. It was just marijuana, smiley face, cross, and a 3, like, on his hands. Like skull. So it's just like, so they'll try to use this ambiguity. Oh, his girlfriend or wife at the time called the police because maybe he beat him or beat her or something. So, I think
this strikes in the face.
So I think it's, again, a kind of a political strategy. And it's because it's not even for when the left tries to say that police also will kill unarmed black men, they'll pick like the worst cases or picked armed black men to show them killing to try to perpetuate this narrative. And they'll always choose the worst cases because, again, they're trying to extend the Overton window.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory. And I don't know if I have to push back or just comment on something you just said, because I'm not sure what you actually believe on this. I think due process is important. I think, the Constitution guarantees due process for everyone. I think what's not being talked about is what is due process in each case. Because due process for an illegal gang member is not necessarily the same as a due process for an American citizen. Because due process
it's literally not.
Yeah, it's qualitative. Yes. It's like a fair process. A fair process, it varies based on the situation. So yeah, I think it's fair to say this guy deserves due process, of course. But what's happening is, they're using due process as a Trojan horse to try to convince you that, he's just a Maryland man. Or, there's no reason to believe that he's in the country illegally, or all these other things.
You know what I think this is? There's a loss of the understanding of root language. And so what ends up happening is when I was a kid, the teenage girls at my high school thought the word ignorant meant rude. They didn't understand because they just heard someone say a racial slur and then someone responded, that's ignorant. And the intention was that person doesn't understand what they're doing. They hear it and the context is rude. So what happens is people hear the phrase due process and they think it's Latin. They think it means some Latin, it's some Latin term, mens rea. It's just a legal term that means you get a trial. Due process is a literal English phrase. We don't even need to say due process. We can say fair hearing. Yes. We can say fair process. It is the process you are due under the law. It's not universal. Due process literally just means legal processes that you are due. So what's happened is even conservatives think due process means trial.
Exactly.
And I'm seeing on Twitter, on X, liberals will be like, why aren't they getting due process? And I'll see a response from a conservative guy being like, illegal immigrants shouldn't get trials. And I'm like, you're arguing two different things. The legal and fair process by which a person goes through our legal system to determine whether they're right, wrong, deportable, or criminal is due process. Not getting due process means you were not treated fairly. That's all it means.
I agree.
I think it's a level
but
of due
fact
process.
statement, not an opinion.
Mm-hmm. I think, illegal immigrants should get a different level of due process, level of due process than...
I got to stop you there. Once again, the phrase due process is being used as a Latin term. They should get a different level of what is fair for them.
Yeah.
No, everybody should get what is fair for them.
Okay.
Due process means fair treatment of the law. That's all it means.
Yeah.
Illegal immigrants, what is fair? An ICE agent will review their status, determine if they're a citizen, and if not, and if they've been here less than 2 years, expedited removal.
Yes.
That is due process.
Yes.
It is the fair treatment under the law that they receive based on the codified law set forth by Congress and the Constitution.
I agree. It's a linguistic trap that I see many conservatives falling into, where they're arguing that due process is not due when they need to argue, no, due process is being served, and this is what's due process in this case.
Exactly.
And the argument for how are we going to remove 10 to 20 million people in the country? We can give them all due process, and due process might mean a day in court, rather than this years-long thing that we have to do that makes it impossible to actually enforce the law.
This is the game they're playing. Donald Trump made a statement, we shouldn't give trials to every illegal immigrant. The media then came out and said Trump is trying to deny due process to illegal immigrants because they want to shift the Overton window and convince you that we cannot deport a person without a trial. Trump was saying, and they're pulling him out of context. Why would we have a trial for illegal immigrants? It would take forever. The context of what Trump is saying is, we don't give illegal immigrants trials. Why would we start now? The media misrepresents what he's saying so that they can try and make the argument that it is normal for all illegal immigrants all the time, everywhere, to get a trial with a judge. Nope. Sometimes you go to an ICE agent and he goes, not a citizen, on the plane.
That's your due process.
That's your due process. Yep. Expedited removal.
That's why words matter.
Yeah. Having gone through all of this and even gone through debates, There are a bunch of different ways that individuals get different degrees of due process. If you've been here longer than 2 years, you get a hearing. You can actually argue for a hearing. If you're being deported under the Alien Enemies Act, which Trump just won that court case, the judge sided with him, she still said if a person is to be deported under AEA, they can challenge it. That's one of the reasons why Trump was trying to avoid using AEA in some circumstances, because Alien Enemies Act deportation says you are an invader of this country, to which they can say, oh, yeah, prove it. Whereas if Trump just says, we've reviewed your citizenship and you are ineligible to be in the United States, so you're being deported, they don't get a hearing.
I think there is also something to say about the amount of illegal immigrants that we have in our country isn't going to be able to be handled by the way we currently have our laws set up. The current system was not set up to be able to give whatever level of due process or however we were going to break it down to 20 million people.
I'm stopping you right now. You did it again.
It's the level of due process.
You said we weren't going to be able to give due process. Wrong. We absolutely. There's no. You misunderstand. Due process just means what is fair under the law. We always, in this country, 100% of the time, seek to give people what is fair under the law. Only when there's malicious prosecution or errors do people not get what's fair under the law. There was never a circumstance by which Trump was going to give people less due process. We will always, 100% of the time, as a country, functionally give illegal immigrants their due process.
Because illegal immigrants abused our immigration laws so aggressively, I think we need to change the way legally how we do due process for some of these illegal migrants.
But we don't, because due process is already a subjective thing. Like, we get to choose what we consider a fair hearing, trial. It can be more than that. So I think what Tim is saying is there's not levels of due process. It's that
the due process under the law, but the law needs
No. There's not levels of due process. Due process is a blanket term that means you'll be treated fairly. That's it. That's all it means.
Let's just say fair process, right? We can give everyone a fair process, but a fair process for, I don't know, tax evasion might look different than a fair process for entering the country illegally. And I do think we need to change something about the courts in order to process this many people who are here illegally. But I think it's actually just expand the capacity of the courts. Like, this is not enough judges. You can't do enough hearings. Like, it needs to be like at least 10x.
Yeah.
But we can give everyone due process, and we should.
Yeah, it's like the process due to you, the process due unto you. It's not like a thing. Like, it's process that we are going to give you. We've just, like you said, we've decided upon that already. We've made
just
it
say, instead of saying due process, say treated fairly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
The illegal immigrants who come here will be treated fairly.
I think the illegal immigrants who come here are treated too fairly under the law. And they abused our immigration law. And if we don't change the way we do it, the President Trump won't be able to effectively deport 20 million.
It's not that they're being treated too fairly. It's that all you're saying is we should make it easier to deport them.
Yes.
Look, once again,
I agree.
In many words, legalese. Right.
And I think it's important because it's crazy how the left is using this. The reason why I'm harping on it so much, and I know it's, it might just be semantics, is because the left is using exactly what you're saying. They're going to clip what you said and said, here's a conservative saying less due process.
Yeah.
And then they're going to go to their fans and they're going to say, they're literally saying that they're not going to treat you fairly under the law, that they're going to create special classes of citizens who get special treatment.
Yeah.
No. An illegal immigrant will always get due process. And what is that due process? An ICE agent will say, are you a citizen? They'll say no, and they'll say, on the plane. That's it, like that. That's due process. No judge, no hearing, nothing.
Yeah, and part of the problem with this term is it's not well defined. It's like saying systemic racism. What does that actually mean? No one knows what it means, but people get upset about it, and you keep on moving the goalpost on what's enough. So I agree. We should identify what is the minimum threshold for what we consider fair, and it might be a few hours talking with an ICE agent. I leave that up to the administration to decide, and do that, and say we can do that, and let's get to business here.
Let's jump to this next story from the Post Millennial. Bud Light parent company to invest $300 million to manufacture in the U.S. This new $300 million investment in our manufacturing facilities across the U.S. Will it work?
That's not going to fix Dylan Mulvaney.
I don't think it will. I think Bud Light's screwed. I do think less people care than most people think. I go out to any bar or any casino, and everybody's drinking Bud Light. However, they have not recovered from the damage caused by Dylan Mulvaney. They're now announcing they're going to do this big investment in the United States. Anheuser-Busch InBev's North American branch is going to start manufacturing in the United States. They're based in Missouri, Where were they manufacturing before? Mexico?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, then, I guess that was a simple story. Nobody believes this will save Bud Light.
No.
I think Bud Light is still the piss beer of choice among, most Americans. If I'm just looking for a piss beer to drink real quick, I'll sip on a Bud
Natty
Light if I
Light,
need
bro.
to. It's kind of whatever's there. So like Bud Light, boom, all right, whatever. Like
We did an event.
reliable bad beer.
We did an event right after the Dylan Mulvaney thing happened, and like we had to talk to the bar about it because they had Bud Light prominently displayed, and we were like, it's probably a bad idea. Like, look, honestly, I don't care if people want to buy a Bud Light. I mean, they probably get laughed at. And then they took all the display Bud Lights down and said, like, we're a bar. We're not going to just throw out all our Bud Light, but we get it. And I was like, hey, man, I don't care if you show it or don't, but I'm just, like, I'm wondering what you guys think. And they thought it'd probably be smart to get rid of the Bud Light.
Yeah. I didn't realize there's still a hangover from the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing.
It
I
never
don't know the
went
last
away.
time I even had Bud Light, so I'm the wrong audience. But
Well, it's not just that. It's that young people don't drink sugar and booze and stuff anymore.
yeah, well, they're not even going outside, so how could that happen exactly?
Maybe this is the problem. Maybe the reason the younger generation isn't getting laid is because they just don't go outside and get drunk.
Well, yeah. Actually. Where would you get drunk and late? College. They
Could it
canceled
be-
college for a year.
They they say that civilization owes everything to beer because it was the humans that stopped to ferment the wheat and the barley and stuff to make beer that resulted in agrarian society and civilization in towns. Humans used to be nomadic, and then they were like, wait, we can't leave. We got all this beer. Well, could it also be that the only reason people have kids is because they get drunk?
Yeah.
I'm half kidding, by the way.
That's a little rapey, but
What do you mean?
well, that's because the left would call that rapey. They would say, oh, if you're in any way inebriated, then you can't consent, and if you can't consent, then it's a sexual assault.
No, Phil. The woman is getting the man drunk.
Fair enough. But even
The woman's dead sober.
well, if you're progressive enough, then the woman getting the man drunk is also a sexual
Still a problem.
Yeah, it's still a problem. But it is true. I mean, there's a lot of social interactions that wouldn't have happened unless people had a couple drinks. And it's very normal, as much as the left wants to try to demonize you for it, it's very normal for someone to go ahead and be like, you know what, I'll have a couple drinks. So that way my inhibitions I'm not so self-conscious. My inhibitions are a little bit lower and I can go talk to people and I can hang out with people.
Remember this one?
Exactly.
Super viral. This was a poster at, what was it, Columbia? Coastal Carolina University. It said, Jake was drunk. Josie was drunk. Jake and Josie hooked up. Josie could not consent. The next day, Jake was charged with rape.
Yeah.
A woman who is intoxicated cannot give her legal consent for sex, so proceeding under these circumstances is a crime. It only takes a single day to ruin your life. This is another point I make about wokeness. People need to understand, woke wasn't always race. Like the left culty nonsense was very much the Me Too movement with things like this, illogical, unjust, and it was gender based. So there you have it. And I think the Gen Z kids who grew up with this took it to heart, and that's why they hide.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you're a boy who sees this kind of propaganda your whole life. Of course, you're going to be afraid of women. Of course, you're going to be afraid that she's going to accuse you of something that you didn't do years later. Of course, you're not going to want to even try, because even trying is considered creepy or considered in some way toxic masculinity. And then women wonder, well, where are all the men? Well, this propaganda is preventing boys from even wanting to be men and take risks and put themselves out there. And both women and men are suffering. So I hope people see this and they realize, oh, okay, well, why do we have a decline in birth rate? Why are people not actually connecting? Why are people not in relationships? It's this kind of rhetoric that doesn't have compassion for either side and treats the man always as some sort of toxic aggressor, and always the woman is completely abnegating all responsibility. It's killing both of us.
Well, it treats women as if they're consistently, things are happening to them, whereas as opposed to actually having any kind of agency. But as soon as they want to have agency, of course, they have to be, looked at as a strong woman that can, boss bitch kind of thing. But then in any context in which they don't want to deal with the repercussions, and society really encourages this kind of behavior, but any situation where women don't want to deal with the repercussions, well, then they were victims. They were somehow, put in this position. It was put upon. It wasn't their fault. And society's been teaching men that the worst thing you can do is to in any way make a woman feel uncomfortable. It is wrong, obviously, to be aggressive and hit people or sexual assault. But if you just awkwardly ask a woman out, right, you like you mentioned, you're risking your reputation, you're risking all kinds of social repercussions, and that's the way that women punish people and each other is through social interactions. And so the value for a man young men to go and actually ask women out, like, it's a really, really dicey proposal, and they're deciding that, porn and video games is better than risking being embarrassed.
Considering that millennials are only just now having kids and it's still at very low rates, and Gen Z is not having kids either, Gen Beta is probably going to be 30 million. Gen Alpha is 40. Some say it could go upwards of 48, maybe, if we add another year or two to the bracket. But then Gen Beta is going to be microscopic. Jeez. Nobody's having kids.
Yeah.
And this is people don't understand. There's this great post by who posted this? Someone, I can't remember who posted it. It was like a Milton Friedman thing about a pencil. Let me see if I can find this one. Do you know that saying?
Where no one can make a pencil.
Yeah.
Or it takes like a whole world.
It was Austin Peterson posted it. There you go. And let me see if I can pull it up. It's that no one can make a pencil.
Yep.
It is through economics. He posted it the other day.
I am somebody who is pro-choice, but I think there's something to be reckoned with about the consequences of giving women such easy access to be able to control their ability to reproduce. So 20 years ago, teen pregnancy used to be everywhere. Teen pregnancy used to be a huge thing. They used to have a show on MTV, Teen Mom, I think it was. There are no teen moms anymore. All the young women, all women's in their teens are on birth control if they are having sex. And if they do get pregnant or aborting their kids, or they don't even have to have a surgical procedure, they could just use the abortion pill or mifepristone, which the Trump administration recently struck down a lawsuit to help restrict. So while being pro-choice, I still understand that there are consequences to abortion and access to abortion pills and contraceptives have on birth rates. I know that's so obvious to say, but still, I think we need to look at from a bird's eye view, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like, women's ability to stop themselves from getting pregnant affects birth rates.
Yes. Can I tell you a story? Or actually, Tim, do you have a thing that you wanted to show?
I was going to no, I couldn't find it. I was saying real quick, the point of the pencil thing I was bringing up is that when the population shrinks, our ability to produce technologies goes with it.
Yeah.
So, no, you're not going to have PlayStation. Like, the less people there are, the closer you're going to get to working on a farm.
So I want to tell you guys a story. Can I do that?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, so 2 weeks ago, I was in Japan, and I went to Osaka. And so dope. And I was just walking around with some friends, and we met these girls. And they're like 22, 23, one from Canada, one from the US. So we're just, joking around, having a good time. And then eventually I hear one of the girls say, Trump and JD Vance need to die. Top of her lungs. We're like walking around Osaka. She says it once. I'm like, what is going on? She says it again. I don't know if it was after that second time or the third time that I confronted her about it. Not aggressively, but it's like, hey, well, like, what's going on here? And I made a joke about, do you hate men or like, you hate Republicans? What's going on here exactly? All of a sudden, the conversation devolved into a conversation about abortion. Now, my position is like yours. I think it's just untenable for women to not have the right to choose. I think an abortion is always a tragedy, though, and I would like to see women choosing to have abortions much less. 93%, at least 93% of abortions are not medically necessary. It's just a choice. And I get why women make the choice. It can be scary to bring a child into the world. I think many men are abandoning their duty of helping to protect and to provide. I understand why women do it. And it's always a tragedy regardless of the reason. They were not, of course, not able to listen to me, and they kept on trying to yell me down. Eventually, I keep explaining, hey, I'm just pro-choosing life. I'm not telling you shouldn't have the right to choose. I'm just saying men and women need to work together so we have fewer abortions. I sidelined with one of the women. The other one was having nothing to do with me at that point. I sidelined with one of the women, and she tells me at age 8, her mom told her that she almost aborted her.
Wow.
This woman had just argued vehemently for abortion while telling me that her mom had almost not brought her into this world. And when I pointed out the contradiction, she tried to justify it. It's like, well, it would have been the right choice if my mom chose to make it. It's like, sorry, I'm not going to buy into the delusion that any world in which you exist is a better world. That's insane.
Especially for that person to say of themselves.
Exactly.
So self-loathing, frankly.
Exactly. But this is what's happening to young women. Young women, look, women are 2 times more likely to be anxious than men. Women are more susceptible to psychological manipulation. That's okay because women have other things that they're good at relative to men. I don't want a man taking care of my child in daycare. I want a woman doing that. But it used to be that men and women worked together. Men could protect women from these dangerous, toxic ideas. But now it's like, yeah, go be a boss, babe. You don't need a man. Go work, climb the corporate ladder. Then they realize they don't even want to do that when they're age 30. And yeah, birth control, which they're taking from the time that they get a period, is distorting who they're even attracted to. So they're not attracted to masculine men anymore. And it's teaching women that having a child is the end of your life, when no, it's the beginning of another. So yeah, there's this very insidious thing that's going on with this. It's a thing behind wokeism, which is extinctionism, really, in my mind.
You know, having a kid recently.
Congratulations.
I thank you. I think the pro-life side is really bad at articulating their arguments. They can't communicate effectively with liberals. And I saw this. Did you see this Charlie Kirk debate on abortion that went viral recently? Because the guy said he thinks that life doesn't begin until consciousness forms. And then Charlie says, so you'd be fine if you were 6 months, the baby being killed? And he says, yes. So the issue is for these people, because Vosh, for instance, argued this. I think he argued it on this show when he was debating Charlie Kirk, actually, that, or with me maybe, I said, when does life begin? He says, sometime after birth. When? You know, the fascinating thing is babies have personalities, and what's happening is these liberals have not ever been around a baby. They've not spent time with babies. They don't know that babies are people that literally act like people. And I know that everybody's got kids and they're like, we all know this already. For me, hearing the pro-life arguments never articulate simple things like babies technically are talking the whole time. They're communicating with you. What the left then does is they argue that for the first 3 months, babies can't actually form any real memories, and they don't talk, they don't do anything, so they're not really alive. That's literally the argument they're making. That's how they justify abortion to the point of birth. Whereas if, you know, the pro-life side largely just says life begins at conception, I got a better argument. My daughter doesn't use words, but she's talking. And so in the past week or so, she started communicating vocally, as she was already communicating non-vocally, but I wouldn't call it verbally. So for instance, first she cries. And we get it, a baby crying because baby needs something. I think liberals can get that. But I'm learning a lot. So for instance, at like 2.5 months, my daughter started going, and we know literally what she's saying. So for instance, we do tummy time. That's when you put the baby on the stomach so that she can learn to crawl and lift her head and start building those muscles. You do it temporary. You do it for short periods. At first, she would cry when she got tired. Now she goes, and we're like, I don't care what language you're speaking. If a French guy exasperated in that way in French, I get the point. So what I'm learning is, and again, I know parents already know all this stuff. I'm saying, from what I've learned, I would advocate for pro-life individuals to use that knowledge in their arguments. So when a liberal says life doesn't begin, no, babies are vocally communicating with you right away, and they have personalities. So there's a lot of people around us are having babies. I won't get into people's private lives and talk about who's having what, but there are other babies here, and the personalities are totally distinct. At 1 month, there are distinct human personalities and behaviors. Like, these are human beings. Just because they don't speak your language right now doesn't mean they're lesser than this. And I would just say I think pro-lifers should utilize those arguments more.
I agree. I think the pro-life arguments, they're just not made well.
No, they're very cold.
Yeah.
But life begins at conception. Therefore, life is worthy of legal protections. That's not an argument you're going to give to a liberal who only cares about emotion and feelings.
Yeah.
You're going to show them a video of a baby trying to talk and being like, explain to that person right there Make it an emotional argument.
Yeah.
I think men encouraging women they knock up to have the children that they got pregnant with instead of encouraging them to abort the children that he got her pregnant with is what's really going to push this over the edge. I think women are led by men. I think men are natural leaders and women are kind of natural followers. And if men push women in a certain direction, that's the direction they'll go in oftentimes. So
Except-
I think men have a big responsibility to play here too. We put a lot of pressure on women. They go through a lot here too.
But the state has replaced men.
Yes.
And so, and the women are a function of the state. So what it used to be is that there was a patriarchy, and the men would fight and die to keep women safe. And who brought this up? Someone mentioned This is an argument somebody made that history, human society, and gender norms was men building fences around their home to protect their women and their children, and then. Feminism was a woman coming up and convincing the woman she was being oppressed by being in the fence. So the woman tears the fence down and then gets eaten by wolves.
I saw that and I tweeted it. I don't remember.
You tweeted that.
I tweeted it though. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I remember that one. Wow. And yeah, these feminists are being. So the issue is, women are now voting. They're voting in systems of control in government. And I know men vote too, but I'm saying that women are largely Democrat. Men, this is going to be crazy. Gen Z men are on the right, Gen Z women are on the left. So it's going to be real weird in the next 20 years. But they're voting in systems of control and power that men adhere to. So men are getting their directions from women now.
Yeah.
So like when that thing we showed where it's like Josie and Jake were drunk and then Josie was raped, but Jake is the rapist. That means there is a bunch of guys wearing badges who are going to say what happened. And Jake and Josie are going to be like, we were both drinking at a party and hooked up. And the cops are going to go, yep, Jake, you're a rapist. You're under arrest. And that is the fault of men.
Women are directing society and they can't even decide where they want to go for dinner.
I think there's something back on that poster. I don't think it's rape if both of them were drunk and they ended up having sex. But I do think Jake has a little bit more to do with it.
What do you mean?
Because Jake probably was the one who would hit on her and initiate the whole thing. And if you know how sex work, it's usually the man who's, So I think men have more, because men are leaders. Men are the people who...
You can't treat the law that way.
That's ridiculous.
There are numerous... There's... I mean...
No. I didn't say there was a rape, and I didn't say both of them being drunk.
No, and you're wrong. Women hit on guys all the time at drunk frat parties.
Sure.
College parties, there's men and women looking
just
to
don't
hook
hit
up.
on you a lot.
No, I think men and women are different, I guess is my point, and they behave different socially, and there's social consequences to that, if that makes any sense.
Listen.
And more men hit on women than women hit on men. And again, I'm not saying that it was rape because they were both drunk.
Women hit on men
but I guess
differently than men hit on women, but women absolutely hit on men. Absolutely. It's just different, and you have to understand how women hit on men.
I think to Elaad's point, so here's where I agree with you. Men and women are different, right? Men are on offense, women are on defense. That's just how it works all the time. From a legal standpoint, though, we can't treat men and women differently when it comes to the legal standard.
No. And again, I'm not saying that there's any law breaking, but I think we should acknowledge men and women are different and play different roles. And I don't think men and women.
That's
so-called equal. It's a complicated thing. What does it mean?
It's actually a really interesting point that poster, which was a product of the left, was very gender stereotypical.
Yeah.
The poor woman was so weak.
Gender roles.
Right.
So you do like them.
All right, everybody, we're going to go to your chat. So smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know. Make sure you go to rumble.com/Timcast IRL. Join Rumble Premium. Use promo code TIM10 because I've got a special treat for all of you in the uncensored portion of the show. Phil was laughing earlier. It's a project that I've been working on for a very, 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 very short amount of time that you're going to enjoy. And I'll get in trouble for. But let's read your chats.
For a very, very short amount of time.
Indeed. Let's read your Rumble rants. Shadage Wilder says, Tapper thinks everyone is too stupid to see Biden wasn't fit. March 19th, 2021, Biden fell up the stairs. He said to a crowd, Trinidad Shabbat pressure. Trinidad Shabbat pressure. To quote Joe, come on, man. We still sell Sleepy Joe decaf at Casper.com. Concrete Hades says, Elaad, the white thing on the table may have been a snot rag, but there are videos of basically everyone in that meeting repeatedly wiping their noses as if they had just recently snorted a line.
So I think this is part of the issue. So now people genuinely believe, again, he's admitting that it wasn't a bag on the table. It's just, because people were sniffing, now we're going to accuse world leaders of doing blow. So I don't know. Maybe it's because I think of myself a little bit as a journalist that I think we need to have evidence to reach these conclusions. It seems like a sweeping conclusion to come to based off a little bit of, I mean, I don't know. And again, it's the people who are advancing this stuff who you might need to ask yourself, can I trust this person when he tweets stuff out? If he's willing to put forth such obviously wrong things, does this person have my best interest in mind?
I agree. And I was fooled. I originally thought it was a Coke bag, and then I realized it's a tissue. So I can see how people do that.
Matt Seaman. He says, Tim, just wondering if I can get a birthday shout out at the ballpark celebrating the big 3-0. Shout out, brother. Happy birthday. I am jealous. I would love to be chilling at a ball game right now. You see those things where they have the cup and then the straw goes, there's like a little dish that goes on top of the cup and it's got like nachos and like a hot dog on it. That's so great.
That's so American.
We've been talking about doing going to a big ball game for a long time, and
Baseball games are so much fun.
We got to do it.
I hope so.
We got to do it.
It doesn't matter really which teams are playing. Like, it'd be cool to go see, like, if considering the Nationals, no one ever goes to see the Nationals. No one cares. So you can go see the Dodgers when they come through to play the Nationals, or the Red Sox, or the Yankees when they come through to play the Nationals. I think it'd be great.
We've been talking about trying to do a big thing with everybody for a while, but we should never get around to it because we're so busy all the time. I work mornings and nights, so how am I supposed to go to a baseball game during the week? Can't do it.
I'm not a big baseball fan, but I've been to a few games, and it's all about chilling in the stands with the boys, getting drunk, casually watching. Not even watching the show, just messing with your boys. Someone hit a home run. Oh my god!
Until you're stuffed.
Getting chilling with the boys in the stands, sipping brews. Nothing better.
All right, Soapy Enigma says, check out the Boonies HQ and its Discord. That's boonieshq.com. It's a skateboarding branch of Timcast. We're getting the Discord fixed and events are happening. Boonies is growing. So Boonies is separate company, so it's a different membership program, a different Discord and all that stuff. But, I got to be honest. Skateboarding may be an Olympic sport. They're expecting billions to be invested in it. But there's no young people.
Ooh.
So we do board sales, and here's the secret to skateboard sales. Skateboards have always been art pieces on the wall. So the boards that sell the best are the ones that people can buy to hang on the wall. They buy it one time, they never buy it again. You're not going to make a designer graphic with some crazy stuff and then get one person to buy 50 versions of it. It happens, but it's super rare. So for us, we're trying to do the skate company, and every day we're just like, gentlemen, there's only 40 million Gen Alpha. Who is going to be skateboarding? We are going to have to get around 40% of Gen Alpha to skate to replace the existing skateboard market.
Good luck.
That's because of how few people are. And then Gen Beta is going to be the same thing. So I'm kind of thinking maybe the reason that the ultra wealthy are building these bunkers is not because the poles are going to shift, not because of climate change, but because they're not going to be able to manufacture video games, antiseptics, ammunition. So they're stocking up on these things right now because population collapse means it is going to get expensive or just non-existent. Mm-hmm. Like, bro, I don't even know what's in these monitors in front of me or how they're made. I have a general idea. These are I believe these are what, LEDs?
If trends continue, the only hope is that there's actual automation, like actual humanoid robots that are, AI. You can have like AI teach you how to build these.
Think about how sad that's going to be. Maybe that's a good, I say this all the time. We got to get a producer who can help us make these short films. Cause I got, the short film idea I got right now is The Last Human. And it's just all these AI machines watching one guy who's dying. And he gives a thumbs up as it like plugs his brain into the VR for one last time. Because where we're going is, yeah, sure, great. We're going to automate all this production, but there's no people. Like people is life. You know what I mean? Like there's no people. What are we doing? And so what, in 100 years, the population of Earth is 7 million and they're largely isolated from each other, living in virtual reality. And then 100 years from then, the population of Earth is 3,000. And it's a highly mechanized, automated robot planet. The robots are colonizing other things. And the last remaining humans are just like, plug me in, baby.
You know what's happening, though? Third worlders don't have that problem. People in the third world, They have plenty of kids. So,
but they're still dramatically down. Like
Really?
even in Africa, it's like it used to be 12, like 40 years ago. Now it's like 3.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So it is true that their population is still growing relative to everybody else. Still declining though. Who knows? Maybe what ends up happening, maybe the Tesla robot doing the dances. Maybe the answer to Fermi's paradox is that any sufficiently advanced species, the wealthiest will go into behavioral sink, destroy themselves, and then the lesser developed parts of that species will just lose all technology and then revert back to, natural states.
The great filter is much lower than we think.
But it's not, the great filter is an extinction event.
Yeah, but we wouldn't be able to get past to the first level, even because we won't be able to get off the planet because of the population crash once.
Right. The filter is not so much that humans go extinct, but that wealthy humans stop reproducing, or a wealthy, advanced elements of the species engage in behavioral sink.
Yeah. So it's actually not an issue of physical destruction, like we nuke ourselves or something, but psychological destruction.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, we better fix our mindset. Start having babies.
All the Red Deer fans are thinking about Mouse Utopia right now. Mouse Utopia always comes back.
Mouse
to my mind.
Utopia.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know that book Mouse that the left is always raging about?
No.
It's where the cat is Hitler and then the mice are Jews or whatever.
Oh man,
Jesus.
Heard of this? Yeah.
You've never seen that MAUS?
And I feel like that's anti-Semitic to compare Jews to mice, frankly.
Rats.
Rats, even worse with the. And this from the left.
Yeah, let me see if. Nope, we don't want that.
Are you surprised?
I mean, kind of.
I mean, I got to be
that
honest.
explicit about it.
I got to be honest. I don't know anything about the book. I don't want to. But yeah, it is rats.
And
yeah, here you go.
And are they made to look like them? Oh, okay. Well, they do have long snouts there.
What are the ratings like?
The ratings?
Yeah, what are people saying?
I think like the left.
Oh, I think it's made by a Jew, Art Spiegelman. They could get away with that.
They can get away with it. All right, see what we got. Barry N. McGrowan says, Tim, I truly believe white people don't hate blacks and black people don't hate whites. The one thing that both races hate is the system that pits them against each other. What say you? I don't think it's so simple as to say yes or no. I think there are racist people and there are not racist people. It doesn't matter what race you are. So some people see the system and don't want to fight. Some people want to fight. But I'd imagine if we took like one person of each race and then like babies and then dropped them in like a biodome where they had no contact with the outside world, they wouldn't be racist.
Of course not.
Because there's no people to be racist to. There's only one guy who's Asian. That's just Jim, you know?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of racial tension in this country, and it would be dishonest to tell you otherwise. I mean, I'd wish for it to be different, and I wish no people were bigoted towards each other, but I feel like that's just denying the kind of the facts of our
here's one. Barry N. McGrowan. Barry McGrowan says, Tim, if white people were so racist, then why did Obama get elected twice? He cheated.
Yeah,
does that count as an answer?
I don't think he
cheated. I'm kidding.
Answer, but I don't
They
think
could still be racism despite having elected a black president. I don't know.
Of course there is.
Right?
I'll say this. I actually think the U.S. is one of the least racist countries on earth.
That can be true too. Those things could be true at the same time.
And I think what is actually happening is because we care so much about racism. Like I just went to Japan. They don't care about racism because they're all Japanese. Right? They're racist, but they don't actually exhibit racist tendencies.
Right.
They're not interacting with people who are not Japanese.
They're racist towards people who aren't there, though. The Japanese are very racist.
Like
yes.
my brother,
Koreans too.
I went with my brother, and he was sitting next to a Japanese person on a train, and he saw the Japanese person send a racist meme of a black person to a friend. like kind of funny. And in America, because we care so much about not having racism that anytime it shows up at all, we talk about it a lot. But yeah, I think some of this is just social media distortion. It's honestly not that bad. And there's work to do, but I think we don't need to hyperbolize everything and act like we're worse off than we used to be. I would say as a black person, this is definitely the best time to be black.
So I think within living memory, there was segregation. I think it ended with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So again, like facts on the ground, there is some racial tension within our country.
I got to stop you there.
Not that we can't get past that.
Segregation did not end with the Civil Rights Act, and there still is segregation. So the important thing to understand is we've codified against it, but it still happens. So blockbusting and redlining were happening into the 80s. So that was in the intentional actions of market industries in the housing market to make sure that whites and blacks were segregated, not in the bathrooms, geographically. So they were still saying, okay, if we can't keep you out of our business, we'll just move you so far away from the business you can't show up anyway, to create white neighborhoods and black neighborhoods. That still happens today. And I love this story. This woman who worked for, I think she worked for Vice. She was this Latina chick. She was woke as they come. And she owned a building in New York that was gifted to her by her wealthy parents. And she was talking all about this racism stuff and all the problems. And I asked her, I was like, if a black family moved next door to your building, what would you sell? And she goes, yeah, of course. And I was like, why? She goes, because the property value is going to go down. And I was like, the property value is going to go down because people like you desperately try to sell when black people move in. She's like, look, I understand racism is a problem, but I'm not going to lose money on my property for whatever that is. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, these people are racist.
I think it takes time for racial division and tension to heal. Brown v. Board of Education was only ruled in 1954. I guess the people would have to be really old to still remember something like that. But just something
and the critical race theorists think that it was ruled incorrectly.
Yeah.
Look, the fact of the matter is the way that we treat racism in the United States, racism is the worst thing imaginable. Murder is worse than racism. Like, rape is worse than racism. Actual physical violence is worse than someone that has a bad opinion. And the way we behave as if racism is like the worst thing. You have to look at it in context and treat it for what it is. It's someone being crappy to someone else. If they're not actually being violent, then you can just be like, all right, well, he's a dick, you know? That's just the way.
Joe Biden served with segregationists. All right, I think I've read it.
I got to read this one because, again, guys, the reason why I went over the issue of due process so often is because people can't understand, they can't comprehend it. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be mean to anybody, but people literally can't comprehend what due process means. Again, they think it's like a Latin phrase that implies a court trial. Mark Clancy says, why would there be any reason to give due process? They are not being sentenced to prison. Their property is not being taken. They are just getting a free ticket to the country they are from. Then that is the due process. Okay. Stop thinking of due process as one word and think of due as in what does a person do and what is the process by which we determine whether or not they're allowed to be here. The due process would then be like literally saying, I walk to the store. Like, people can't comprehend it. I don't know how much further I could simplify it.
Can I give a framing?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's a fair process in a civil case versus a criminal case? Obviously, in a criminal case, there's a lot more that has to happen. You need to prove that someone did something beyond reasonable doubt. You go through a lot more legal proceedings for a criminal case. In both civil and criminal cases, we give due process, but what happens that we call due process is different. So I think what this gentleman is not understanding is that you can give due process to illegal immigrants, and you have to because that's in the Constitution. But the thing that you call due process might be a lot less than you would do if someone, like, again, cheated on their taxes.
Just call it the process a person is due. Illegal immigrants, what is the process that is due to them? Having an ICE agent review their paperwork and kick him out of the country in 2 hours. That is the process that is due to an illegal immigrant who is here for less than 2 years. It's called expedited removal. So when you say, why would there be any reason to give due process, it is a nonsensical statement. Why would there be any reason to literally ask if a person is a non-citizen? Let's frame it that way. The process that is due to an illegal immigrant is for an ICE agent to say, are you a citizen? Yes or no? And if not, deport them. Now let's take that, remove the phrase due process and replace it with its mechanism. And I'll read what a super chat says. Why would there be any reason for an ICE agent to ask a person if they're a citizen or not? They are not being sentenced to prison. Their property is not being taken. They're just getting a free ticket to the country they are from. Why would an ICE agent ask if a person is a citizen or not? That is the process due to an illegal immigrant. And after that process, which is due, is delivered, they put them on a plane and send them back to their home country. But people keep thinking the phrase due process means going to court. It does not. And then conservatives go on X and get roped into by liberals into inadvertently arguing to give illegal immigrants trials. Here we go. C'est la vie.
Ridiculous.
And that's the actual discussion we should be having, which is what is sufficient due process in this case, not whether we should be assigning due process. It's much simpler, and that's the discussion that both sides should be having, but they're not.
Based African says, I know the story was from yesterday, but I don't think bringing in the African refugees was a good idea. There's a pause on accepting refugees, and making an exception for white Africans is terrible optics, even if it proved Dems are racist. However, Donald Trump signed an executive order in January to pause refugee resettlement. However, within a week or two, signed another executive order saying exceptions will be made for South Africans. And in the initial order, he did say there were always going to be exceptions. The initial order on refugee resettlement said, largely, we're going to stop refugee resettlement, except in certain circumstances. Then, like 2 weeks later, he said, here's one of those circumstances, white Afrikaners, because of what's going on. So more importantly, a judge stayed those orders, and there is currently no pause on accepting refugees. That's the important distinction. Trump wants it to be. There is not. I think what Trump is doing is basically like, hey, we're going to freeze refugees. A judge said, no, you're not. And then Trump said, okay, bring in the white people. I think that was the play he made.
It's fascinating how worked up people are getting over literally 50 South Africans. I wonder where we were.
I think
there were
59.
59. It's really telling how worked up they're getting over
20 million unvetted random people, or 59.
Who cares? 59 South Africans. We don't need more POSs like Serge in this country, I guess.
Well, because it's a proxy for the concern that Trump is a white supremacist.
No, this Serge guy.
That's the actual concern. I'm not saying it's a valid concern.
With his long
that's
hair.
That's where it's actually coming from. It's not
I
even.
thought he was a
about
woman this morning with this long hair. They're bringing this transgender ideology into our country.
Elaad. Christo Bruin says, journalist and rock star discussing women. Who do you think got exposed to more women prowling?
What? Repeat that question? Who?
Journalist and rock star discussing women. Who do you think got exposed to more women prowling?
Oh, I mean, I don't think Phil would use his status as a rock star.
No.
Groupies or...
Women prowling.
Oh, women prowling on them? Phil, you're a good looking guy, but, you know.
Doesn't matter when you're on stage.
That's so true.
That's the man who knows.
Iggy Pop is ugly as sin. That man.
You're putting me up against stiff competition with Phil. So maybe next time he goes to a show, he could say I'm part of the band. And
there we go.
I got your back.
So I'll tell you a story. When I was a teenager, I was hanging out at the skate park, and one of the kids who skated there, we were all teenagers, was like, he's like, hey, I invited this girl to come skate with us. And so he's like, just be cool, you know, guys, because, like, you know, I want to date her and everything. So then I went to the other kids. There's like 4 or 5 of them. And I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Literally, no matter what trick he does, scream and cheer and act like it's the craziest trick you've ever seen. And so dude drops in the mini ramp, and he does like something that's like not really good at all. And we're going, ah, whoa. And then like she's standing there, and then I'm looking at the dude, and I'm like, dude, he's so good. This is crazy. You know,
you gotta gas
he's
him
the
up.
He's the rock star.
Those
man.
are real
gas
friends.
him up, man.
Those are real friends. They understand.
And he had no idea what was going on. He was just like, yeah, guys, thank you.
Did he get the girl?
I don't know. I was a teenager. I probably went and got a milkshake or something.
Damn.
He's in the suburbs of Chicago. Nothing untoward. But they probably
and
went and got a Coke
and
a Checkers burger.
And the story with the wholesome end. There you go.
There we go.
I mean, I literally think it was a wholesome end. Like,
That's
suburb
perfect.
kids weren't doing drugs and doing crazy stuff. They were like,
perfect.
They were scared to hold hands.
Of course. He married her.
I mean, I haven't seen the guy in 30 years, so man, that's crazy. Not 30 years, it's 20 something years, 25 years. How old am I? Wow.
Don't think about it. I don't.
Solve Fermi's paradox, but not Tim's age.
Yep. Nope. All right, let's grab some more. Based Africans back. He says, affirmative action was good, but it should have had a sunset clause because it's inherently racist. Same for a potential federal abortion law.
If it's inherently racist, why have it to
have it
begin
at all?
with?
All laws should have sunsets. All of them.
That I'm open to.
Every single one.
Okay, so
Even murder.
You had the same idea.
Yeah, it's
Like, if it's racist, if you're acknowledging that it's racist, why have it to begin with? Like,
I think even murder should have a sunset. Like literally every 10 years, they should have to go over the bill and then reassess the amount of time they're giving people, where they're like, what are the general rules in the codification of how murder is handled in this country.
and when you don't sunset laws, you have Trump able to go back to 1798 for the Aliens Act or whatever to deport people. So, yeah.
or contradictory
Yes, but
laws.
murder's older than that. So when people are like, it's an old law, and I'm like, there's older laws.
Yeah. And to this Based African, I think he's making some good comments. So good job, Based African. if something is racist, we should not do it at all. Not do it for a certain amount of time and then sunset it. So instead, let's figure out not racist ways to help everyone in this country.
I guess to steelman the argument, though, is there any obligation that the country has to so-called right the wrongs that it's perpetuated against black people specifically?
No, I think the government has a responsibility to make an equal environment where everyone has an opportunity to succeed, not right past wrongs. So, for example, let's say black people came out of slavery and for whatever reason were immediately making as much money as white people and just like it's almost as if slavery hadn't happened. You wouldn't then go say, well, you still have to give black people something because of something that happened in the past. So the actual issue is that people are not giving equal opportunities to thrive in present day. And there's a variety of ways you can solve it. It doesn't have to be on a racial basis. It can be on a socioeconomic basis.
I actually think that reparations need to be paid by the South and the slaves who were freed to the families of people whose ancestors died fighting to free them. I don't actually think that, but you can see the argument.
Yeah.
If you're going to argue that we deserve something from your government, the counter is going to be, okay, well, like my great-great-great-grandfather, you know, his brothers, they died to free your ancestors, so what do I get for that? There's like, you know, my ancestor was left as a widow with no one and was starving and nearly died. Is there any, like this country went through hell, million people, how many people died? Like 1 point something million?
In the Civil War?
In the Civil War?
I think more.
I don't know.
Like 1.2, was it? Let's get the number.
Oh, no, around 700,000 deaths, I believe.
For all sides?
Yeah.
What percentage of the population was that?
It's between 600 and 1 million total deaths. I don't know, but a lot.
And I mean,
so look, I don't mean that literally. I just think that we're not going to move forward as a country if everyone's trying to argue why they're owed something from 200 years ago.
That's ridiculous.
Like, you know, I have an ancestor. I believe my ancestry is on both sides of the Civil War. I'm not going to make an argument. 2.5%. I'm not going to make an argument that I just found out that I have an ancestor who was a captain in the American Revolution.
oh, wow.
That means everybody should have to pay me because, you know, immigrants who come here should have to pay descendants who fought the revolution. Like, it's ridiculous. Yeah. I don't even know the guy's name. You know, it kind of sucks. It'd be great if we did know our family histories because it's a powerful thing. But I don't know. I'm not going to complain about it. Imagine if I went back to the Korean side of my family and started going after Japan. Japan, you got to pay. Why? Come on.
Yeah.
Nobody. We're moving past this and trying to build relationships and ties and trade. We're going to go to the Uncensored show right now, my friends. And I've got a special treat for you of a project I've been working on that can only be displayed on the members-only uncensored portion of this show. So go to rumble.com/Timcast IRL, and you're going to need to become a premium member. Use promo code TIM10. You'll get $10 off your annual membership, and I think it drops it down to like $80 for the year. But you also get access to Steven Crowder. You get access to Dr. Disrespect and all of Rumble's premium offerings. You get our Green Room podcast as well. We've got 2 feature-length documentaries, and we've got 2 more coming out soon. I wish we could work faster, but we're going as fast as we can to produce all the stuff for you guys. But I've got a special treat for you on this Uncensored show you're going to love. Smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know. Kaizen, do you want to shout anything out?
Thanks for having me, first of all. So shout out to you. This is my first time in a studio with a political podcast, so it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, really?
Right on.
Yeah, so thanks for having me, guys. It's been really, really great. And yeah, if you want to connect with me, I'm on socials. That's Kaizen everywhere. I'm also a life coach, so if you want to be mentored by me, sharpen your thinking, sharpen your communication, I can do that too for you. So find me.
Kaizen, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. You're a very sharp guy, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of success in the space because you're so eloquent. My name's Elaad Eliyahu. I'm a White House correspondent and journalist here at Timcast. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Follow me on all the social media at Elaad Eliyahu. Phil?
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. Our new record called Anti-Fragile dropped in January on the 31st. You can check it out on YouTube, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Spotify, Pandora, and Deezer. Don't forget the left lane is for crime.
We will see you all over at rumble.com/TimcastIRL for a special little treat. Thanks for hanging out.